when a rogue bear savagely ripped both arms off elite disc golf sensation Akasha Lombardi during the summer of '92, everyone assumed his career was over. But Akasha Lombardi wasn't a normal man. The last day Lombardi was ever seen holding a disc in his hands was during the second round of the Cookie Crisp Classic in Oregon. Entering the round, he held a commanding 8-stroke lead. Fellow competitors recalled how fixated he seemed that morning on the fact that he possessed arms. "So glad God gave me these," he'd say repeatedly, gesturing proudly toward his arms using his arms. It would prove to be the final arm-based gesture of his career, possibly even his life. On the 12th tee, Lombardi violently yanked a drive deep into the surrounding forest. Some players would have accepted the penalty and moved on. Akasha bravely ventured into the woods after it. Several minutes later, he found his disc clutched tightly in the jaws of an enormous black bear. The animal stared back at him with narrowed eyes. Akasha was frightened, but he knew bears. And he knew black bears were shit at fighting. So he charged it. Akasha was a strong man, but not bear strong. "He ripped my arms off so cleanly, I barely even knew they were gone," Lombardi calmly told spectators after emerging from the forest, displaying the sort of emotional stability rarely seen in a man who just spent the last 18 minutes watching a bear tear off both his arms. Tournament officials rushed him to the hospital despite his insistence that he could still finish the round. They briefly allowed him to try, but every attempt to pick up a disc was interrupted by him looking down and saying, "Huh. Used to be able to do that." At that point everyone agreed the situation was probably serious. At the hospital, MRIs confirmed what many had already suspected: his arms weren't there anymore. Seeking a second opinion, Akasha consulted another specialist. After additional testing, they reached the same conclusion. Akasha disappeared from the disc golf world. Years passed. Then, in 1994, he announced he was making a comeback. Many were skeptical. Grainy footage began circulating of Lombardi practicing. He gripped discs with his teeth and launched them using a violent neck-whipping motion. Rumors began to spread, a legend began to form. Could one of the greatest players in the world overcome impossible odds? The answer, as it turned out, was no. When the 1995 season began, a painful truth became evident. Akasha could no longer throw far, or straight, or really at all. At his first comeback event, his opening tee shot slipped from his teeth during the backswing, floated gently upward, and landed directly at his feet. Polite applause followed. One child in the gallery asked, "Is he doing a trick shot?" Akasha took a disappointing +212 into the 18th hole. Standing on the 18th tee, frustrated and defeated, he attempted one final throw. With an explosive snap of the neck, he launched the disc nearly 20 feet, his longest drive of the day. The gallery erupted. But the celebration was short-lived. The disc landed on its edge, and rolled directly into another dark forest. Heroically, Akasha walked back into the forest to get what was his. Almost immediately, the unmistakable screams of a man getting attacked by a bear could be heard. Officials waited nervously at the edge of the forest, uncertain whether they should intervene. At one point, a fan started running into the forest before an official grabbed his shoulder. "Leave him," he said. "He knows what he's doing." Eventually Lombardi emerged from the trees, bleeding heavily from the face and neck. Doctors rushed toward him. "Did you lose any more limbs?" one official asked. Akasha smiled. "No, but I got my disc back this time." This was obviously a lie. He had no disc. People applauded anyway. Bears had taken everything from this man, yet somehow he refused to quit. Then, without another word, Akasha turned around and wandered back into the forest. He was never seen again. Some locals claim he still lives out there in the forest among the bears. Golfers occasionally hear distant screaming echoing through the woods. "That's old Akasha," they'll say. "He sure does love those bears." Others believe he was eaten by yet another bear. No one can say for certain. A group of campers discovered an armless skeleton a few days later, but authorities were quick to caution against speculation. Those bones could belong to any one of the golfers who were eaten by bears this week, one investigator noted. What became of Akasha Lombardi may forever remain a mystery. But his legacy endures as proof that while bears can take a man's arms, they can never take his spirit.